I stood there, a stranger at my own birthday party, watching my husband's family feast, while my own siblings were pushed to the shadows. They thought I'd stay quiet for the sake of peace. They were wrong. I didn't just find my voice, I found the microphone. The candles on the cake weren't even lit yet, but I could already feel the heat rising in my chest. It was my 30th birthday, a milestone, a day that was supposed to be about reflection, joy, and the people who had known me since I was a messy-haired kid in pigtails. My husband, Ethan, had promised me a family dinner. In my mind, that meant a cozy, intimate gathering where my brother Leo and my sister Sarah could finally relax and laugh with us. But as I walked into the dining hall of the restaurant Ethan had booked, my heart didn't just sink, it shattered. The long mahogany table was already packed, but not with my people. At the head of the table sat my mother-in-law Beatrice, draped in silk and wearing an expression that suggested she owned the air we were breathing. Flanking her were Ethan's 3 cousins, his aunt, and his overbearing brother Marcus. They were already deep into the appetizers, the clinking of silverware masking the silence that greeted me. "Lily Rose, there she is," Beatrice called out, though she didn't stand up. She waved a hand vaguely toward the far end of the room. "We started without you, dear." The calamari was getting cold, and you know how Marcus gets when he's hungry. I scanned the room, my eyes searching for the 2 people who actually mattered. I found them. Leo and Sarah were standing awkwardly near the coat rack. There were no chairs left at the main table. None. My brother, who had driven 4 hours through a rainstorm to be here, was holding a small gift-wrapped box, looking like a trespasser at his own sister's celebration. "Ethan," I whispered, pulling my husband aside. My voice was trembling. "Where are they supposed to sit? Why is your entire extended family here, when we agreed on a small circle?" Ethan didn't even look me in the eye. He was busy pouring wine for his aunt. "Oh, come on, Lily. The more the merrier, right? Mom thought it would be a great chance for a family reunion. Leo and Sarah are fine. They're easygoing. We'll grab a couple of side stools from the bar or something." Side stools. My siblings, the people who stayed up with me when our parents passed away. The people who worked extra shifts to make sure I finished my degree. They were being relegated to bar stools at the edge of the room, while Ethan's cousins, who couldn't remember my middle name if their lives depended on it, toasted to family tradition. I watched as Beatrice loudly redirected the waiter, moving Sarah's place setting, the one Sarah had tentatively tried to carve out at the corner, to make room for Beatrice's designer handbag. "It's just a chair, Sarah," I heard Beatrice say with a thin, sharp smile. "I'm sure you're used to being flexible." The disrespect wasn't a spark. It was a gallon of gasoline. I looked at Sarah's slumped shoulders. I looked at Leah's tightened jaw. They were staying silent because they didn't want to ruin my big day. They were willing to be humiliated just so I could have a peaceful birthday. That was the moment I realized that if I didn't speak up, this wouldn't just be the story of my birthday. It would be the story of my entire marriage. A life where my history was erased to make room for Ethan's ego and Beatrice's whims. I saw the DJ setting up in the corner for the evening's lounge music. He had left a wireless microphone resting on the edge of his table while he adjusted some cables. I didn't go to my seat. I didn't sit on a bar stool. I walked straight to the DJ booth. The weight of the microphone in my hand felt solid, real, final. I switched it on and the sharp click echoed through the expensive speakers, cutting right through Beatrice's loud story about her recent trip to the Hamptons. The room went silent. Ethan looked up, a glass of Cabernet halfway to his lips, his expression shifting from confusion to sudden pale realization. "Good evening, everyone," I said. My voice was steady, vibrating through the hall with a clarity that surprised even me. "I'd like to make a toast." Beatrice smirked, leaning back. She probably thought I was about to thank her for hosting. "Today is my 30th birthday," I continued, walking slowly toward the center of the mahogany table. "And looking around this room, I see a lot of people. I see people who love to eat, people who love to talk, and people who love to take up space." I stopped right behind Leo and Sarah. I put my arms around their shoulders, drawing them into the light. But mostly, I said, my eyes locking onto Ethan's, I see two people who are being treated like ghosts in a room I paid for. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind of silence that rings in your ears. I could see the sweat starting to bead on Ethan's forehead. He set his wine glass down with a shaky hand, the stem clinking against the china. "Lily, honey," he started, his voice a forced whisper that carried through the room anyway. "You've had a few drinks, maybe. Why don't you put the mic down and we can just eat?" "I've had exactly 0 drinks, Ethan," I replied, my voice amplified and cold. "But I have had quite enough of this view." I turned my gaze to Beatrice. She hadn't moved, but her smirk had curdled into a tight, thin line of fury. She looked at me like I was a glitch in her perfectly programmed evening. "Beatrice," I said, addressing her directly through the speakers. "You told my sister she should be used to being flexible. You moved her plate to make room for your purse. A purse that probably costs more than the respect you've shown my family tonight." A gasp rippled through the cousins. Marcus, Ethan's brother, let out a dry, nervous chuckle, but I silenced him with a single look. "And Marcus," I continued, "I noticed you didn't hesitate to take the seat right next to my husband, the seat that was specifically reserved for my brother Leo, the man who actually helped us move into our house while you were too busy to even return a text." Leo tried to tug at my sleeve, his face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and pride. "Lily, it's okay," he muttered. "Don't do this for us." "I'm not just doing it for you, Leo," I said, looking down at him. "I'm doing it for the version of me that was taught to be quiet. That version died 5 minutes ago when I saw you standing by a coat rack like a stranger." I walked back toward the head of the table. Ethan stood up now, trying to reach for the microphone, but I stepped back, keeping the table between us. "This dinner was supposed to be a celebration of my life," I told the room, "and my life started long before I met any of you. It started with the 2 people standing behind me. If there isn't room for them at this table, then there isn't room for me either." Beatrice finally spoke, her voice dripping with practiced condescension. "Lily Rose, don't be so dramatic. It's just a seating arrangement. We are family now. You're being incredibly ungrateful for the effort Ethan put into organizing this." "Effort?" I laughed, and the sound through the microphone was harsh. "The only effort Ethan put in was clicking confirm on a reservation I suggested, and then letting you hijack the guest list. If this is family, Beatrice, then I think I prefer being an orphan." The room felt like it was vibrating. I saw Sarah's eyes well up, but for the first time she wasn't looking at the floor. She was looking at me, and she was standing a little taller. Ethan moved around the table, his face turning a dark shade of red. "You're embarrassing me in front of my entire family. Put the mic down. Now." "I'll put the mic down," I said, leaning in close to the receiver, so my whisper echoed like a roar. "Right after I finish the guest list, because as of this second, the seating arrangement is changing." I looked at the waiter, who was standing frozen by the kitchen door. "Sir," I called out, "could you please bring the check for the appetizers and the drinks served so far? I'll be paying for my siblings and myself. As for the rest of this table, they'll be handling their own tabs." Ethan grabbed my arm, not painfully, but firmly. "You can't be serious. This is my family. And they," I said, pointing to Leo and Sarah, "are my blood. Choose very carefully what you say next, Ethan, because I'm about to walk out that door, and I'm only taking the people who actually know who I am." The room felt like it was holding its breath. Ethan's grip on my arm loosened as the weight of my words sank in. He looked around at his mother's shocked face, then back at me, his eyes searching for the compliant Lily he had married. She wasn't there anymore. "Lily, you're being hysterical," Beatrice spat, her voice no longer draped in fake sweetness. "You're going to ruin your marriage over a chair? Do you have any idea how much we've done for you?" "A chair?" I whispered into the mic, my voice trembling with a cocktail of rage and relief. "No, Beatrice. I'm walking away over the fact that you think my family is an inconvenience. You didn't just take their seats, you tried to take their dignity. And you," I turned to Ethan, "you stood there and handed her the silverware to do it." The waiter arrived, looking terrified. and handed me a small leather folder. I didn't even look at the total. I pulled out my card, the one linked to the account I'd worked 3 jobs to fill before we ever said I do, and handed it over. I'm paying for my brother, my sister, and myself, I told him clearly. The large party at the center table is on a separate bill. Please ensure Mr. Ethan and his mother receive it. Lily, stop, Ethan hissed. You're acting like a child. If you walk out now, don't expect me to follow you. You're disrespecting my mother in public. There's no coming back from that. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the cowardice hidden behind his expensive suit. I saw a man who would rather watch his wife be insulted than have an uncomfortable conversation with his mother. Good, I said, the word echoing through the speakers, because I'm not looking for you to follow me. I'm looking for you to get out of my way. I turned to Leo and Sarah. Leo was already holding Sarah's coat, a small proud smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He knew. He knew the sister he had protected for years had finally learned how to protect herself. Let's go, I said. As we turned to leave, Beatrice stood up, her chair screeching against the floorboards. Fine, go. Run back to your little life. You'll realize soon enough that you're nothing without this family status. I stopped at the exit, my hand on the heavy brass handle. I turned back one last time, the microphone still live in my other hand. Is just a fancy word for people who are too afraid to be real, Beatrice, I said. I'd rather eat a burger on a curb with people who love me than sit at a banquet with a pack of vultures. Enjoy the calamari. I hope the bill tastes as bitter as you do. I dropped the microphone onto the DJ's table with a dull thud that vibrated through the room. We walked out into the cool night air, the heavy doors of the restaurant swinging shut behind us, cutting off the sound of Beatrice's frantic shouting. The rain had stopped. The pavement was slick and reflected the city lights like diamonds. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Lily, Sarah said, her voice small, Are you okay? That was your husband. I looked at the ring on my finger. It looked heavy. It looked fake. No, Sarah, I said, reaching down and sliding the band off my finger. That was a mistake I'm finally fixing. The ring felt cold as I dropped it into the depths of my coat pocket. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was the final link to a life where I was a secondary character. Leo hailed a cab, and for the first time in 30 years, I didn't check my phone to see if Ethan was okay with me being late. I didn't care about the missed calls that were already starting to vibrate against my hip. We piled into the back seat, the 3 of us, squeezed together just like when we were kids, sharing a single umbrella. Where to, Lily Rose? Leo asked, his voice soft but filled with a new kind of respect. Anywhere that doesn't serve calamari, I said, and for the first time that night, I actually laughed. It wasn't a polite dinner party laugh, it was raw and real. But as the neon lights of the city blurred past the window, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a stinging clarity. I realized that by walking out of that restaurant, I hadn't just left a dinner. I had signaled the end of a 3-year marriage. I knew Ethan. He wouldn't apologize. He would wait for me to come crawling back, blaming birthday hormones or stress. He would expect me to write a formal apology to Beatrice. My phone lit up. A text from Ethan. You've humiliated me. My mother is in tears. Don't bother coming home tonight if you're going to keep acting like this. We will talk when you've regained your senses. Regained my senses. To Ethan, senses meant silence. Senses meant letting his family walk over mine. Is he texting you? Sarah asked, noticing the glow of the screen. He's telling me not to come home, I said, my voice steady. Leo sat up straighter. You have a key to my place, Lily. You always have. No, I said, a new plan forming in my mind. I'm going home, but not to sleep. I'm going there to finish what I started at that table. I told the driver to change the destination. When we pulled up to the house I had decorated, the house I had turned into a home while Ethan was busy being the golden sun, the lights were all on. Ethan's car wasn't in the driveway yet. He was likely still at the restaurant, playing damage control and comforting his mother's bruised ego. Wait here, I told my siblings. I walked into the house. It smelled like the expensive candles Beatrice had gifted us, scents she liked, not me. I went straight to the bedroom. I didn't cry. I didn't smash anything. I simply pulled out my largest suitcase and began to pack. Not everything, just the things that were mine before him. My books, my grandmother's old quilt, and the legal documents I kept in the bottom drawer. I was zipping the bag when I heard the front door slam. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Ethan burst into the room, his tie loosened, his face a mask of indignation. "Oh, so you're packing? Good. Maybe a few nights at Leo's cramped apartment will remind you of what you're throwing away." I stood up, pulling the suitcase off the bed. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see the man I loved. I saw a stranger who happened to share my last name. "I'm not going to Leo's for a few nights, Ethan. I'm going there to wait for my lawyer to call you." He laughed. A sharp, ugly sound. "A lawyer? Over a seating arrangement? You're delusional. You'll be back by Monday when you realize you can't maintain this lifestyle on a teacher's salary." "It's not about the chair, Ethan, and it's not about the money," I said, walking toward him. He didn't move, expecting me to flinch. I didn't. "It's about the fact that you watched your family treat mine like trash and you didn't even blink. You didn't just fail me as a husband tonight, you failed as a decent human being." I pushed past him, my suitcase wheels clicking against the hardwood. "Lily," he shouted after me, "if you walk out that door, I'm changing the locks." I stopped at the front door and looked back. "Don't bother," I said. "I'm taking my name off the lease tomorrow anyway. Have fun living here with Beatrice. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to pick out your wallpaper." I walked out, the cool night air hitting my face again. I got back into the cab, and as we pulled away, I saw Ethan standing in the doorway, a small, shrinking figure in the rearview mirror. "Where to now?" the driver asked again. I looked at Leo and Sarah. "Now," I said, "we go get that birthday cake, the one we like." We ended up at a small 24-hour diner on the edge of town. It wasn't mahogany-lined, and there were no waiters in white gloves. It smelled like maple syrup and cheap coffee, and it was perfect. Leo bought a whole chocolate fudge cake from the display case. He didn't ask for a discount, and Sarah didn't ask for permission to sit down. We piled into a vinyl booth, the red leather cracking under us, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. "To Lily Rose," Leo said, raising a thick ceramic mug of coffee. "The woman who finally realized she's a queen, even without a crown." "To the microphone," Sarah added with a giggle. I've never seen Beatrice move that fast in my life. She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. We laughed until my ribs ached. It was a strange, beautiful feeling, the kind of joy that only comes after you've burned down a bridge that was leading you to the wrong place. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold, I took a final look at my phone. There were 42 missed calls from Ethan, and a string of increasingly desperate texts from Beatrice, ranging from insults to requests for a private meeting to discuss the optics. I didn't reply. I didn't even block them yet. I just turned the phone off. The optics didn't matter anymore. My life wasn't a PR campaign for the Ethan-Beatrice alliance. It was mine. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers were served. Ethan tried to fight it, then he tried to bribe me, and finally he tried to play the victim to our mutual friends. But it didn't stick. The story of the birthday mic drop had already spread. People knew. And more importantly, I knew the truth. I moved into a small, sun-drenched apartment, closer to the school where I teach. It doesn't have a marble fireplace or a designer kitchen, but it has a balcony filled with plants, and a guest room that is always, always reserved for Leo and Sarah. There are no side stools here. Sometimes when I'm grading papers or sipping tea in the quiet of my new home, I think about that night. I think about the girl who walked into that restaurant heart-heavy and hesitant. I barely recognize her now. I learned that day that family isn't about whose name is on the birth certificate or who shares your holiday table. It's about the people who make sure you have a seat, especially when the world tries to tell you to stand in the corner. My name is Lily Rose, and I'm no longer waiting for someone to give me a turn to speak. I've got the mic now, and I'm never letting it go. End question. If you were in Lily's shoes, would you have stayed for the dinner or walked out the moment you saw the table? If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Lily Calm Stories for more tales of courage and truth. Until next time, stay brave.